A while back, I did a bite model breakdown of the Mormon Church. I felt like I'd been a little unfair to them in the past, so I decided to go at it from a slightly more relaxed angle. Well, Mr. Atheist is an ex-Mormon, so when he asked me if I would do a full 4-part breakdown of it with him, I couldn't pass it up. My first breakdown still stands up, so it could be valuable to give it a watch if you haven't seen it yet. But this is added information, so it'll be bound to be interesting. Let's get into it.
Well, today I want to talk precisely about whether or not Mormonism is a cult, and do so by evaluating against the bite model. So I'm Mr. Atheist. Let's do this. So because we are talking bite model, I thought there would be no one better to bring in than Telltale himself. You've seen him on the channel already before, but in case you are new here, Telltale, won't you introduce yourself to the people?
Yeah, I'm Telltale. I have a channel, self-named Telltale. I don't really know what to say about myself. I talk about cults a lot. I've been using the bite model for a really long time. It's from Stephen Hassan. If you guys don't know who that is, you should check him out. It stands for Behavior, Information, Thought, and Emotion Control. And it is our method for determining if something is a cult or not. Cults commonly use these tactics to replace somebody's authentic identity with the cult identity. So we're going to go through it, see what we can find out about Mormonism.
And back in December, I had actually watched a video Telltale already did called Is Mormonism a Cult? A Bite Model Comparison. He admits several times during the video that unlike Jehovah's Witnesses, where he comes from, he can't evaluate the claims necessarily as accurately because he's not an insider. Now, he actually got a ton right, and I'm positive he made a lot of Mormons uncomfortable with the amount of insider information he seemed to have access to. Now, the bite model covers a whole lot of stuff. We are going to break this up into 4 parts. So today we will cover the B in the bite model, behavior control, but let's not waste any more time. Like a couple of Philip DeFranco's, let's just jump into it. So one thing we're going to do to make a direct comparison is we're going to use the same scale that Telltale uses when evaluating cults. Basically, it is a scale that is 7 points. However, it's 7 spread out points. Each point can either score a 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, or 21, basically to sort of represent the amount of intensity it takes to upgrade to the next point. Telltale, take it away with point number 1 under behavior control.
So first point on the bite model under behavior control is regulate individuals' physical reality. Originally, I put a 3 down for this. Usually when this kind of thing is found in cults, you'll find the cult requires the member to carry things with them or things like that. It's a way to give them a constant reminder that they're a member of this group.
So Telltale, you gave them a 3, and I think the reason why I thought this one was too low, a lot of them I thought were right on point, but this one specifically, Mormons' temple garments. Those are an actual symbolic thing that they have to wear all of the time. This is what a lot of people refer to as the magic underwear. Once you become an adult, you have to wear these ceremonial underwear that have actual symbols on them that have representations. Mormons often describe them as wearing a hug with you all the time, things of that nature. Another thing, Mormons are encouraged to always have scriptures with them nearby, the Book of Mormon and the Bible. And so there should never be an instance where you might need the scriptures and you not have access to them. So those would be the 2 biggest reasons. I'm not saying you need a big point jump in there, but the magic underwear, I would say why maybe it could do with a little boost.
I did not think about that. That's a good point. Honestly, I think I'd probably raise it up to at least an 8. Do you feel comfortable with an 8 on that?
I do think an 8. Yeah, because it's not as bad as some things I've heard of. They're not wearing anything to like inject pain into themselves or the worst that I could think of this. But yeah, I'd say an 8 is probably about where I'd put it too.
Okay, second point is dictate where, how, and with whom the member lives and associates or isolates. I put down 3 for this one.
Honestly, on this one, 3 might be appropriate. But there are local exceptions. So a lot of times when you're going to school or whatever, if you are still in the public school system, because remember, a lot of Mormons do homeschool, you are meant to gravitate toward your friends. So the main reason why I would say this one isn't a 0 is pertaining to relationships. It is very much dictated that you should only be with other Mormons. And they won't word it like that. They'll say that you should always be looking to head for a temple marriage. But that can only happen between two Mormons in good standing. So I think you were right on the not a 0. 3 is fine, I think.
You're happy with 3 because I wasn't sure about that one. I know Jehovah's Witnesses are serious about with whom you associate, but I didn't want to overshoot it. I felt like I was being a little bit unfair to Mormonism from the start, so I lowballed them on this one. Is 3 a good one, or should we move up a little?
I still think 3 is fine. Maybe it's a 5 because there is some level of like teaching you, but it's more of teaching you, indoctrinating you on who to look out for and who to run away from. But remember, Mormons are actually going to be more interested in making friends with lots of non-Mormons to try and bring people into Mormonism. That's one of their main recruiting techniques. So 3 is probably good.
So the next point I've got down here is regulate when, how, and with whom the member has sex. Now, I know they're really serious about how they treat sex generally. It's not a light thing. I think I put 13 down for that one because that's about as extreme as it gets without actually cutting your junk off, like, for example, Heaven's Gate actually did. Is that a fair number for you think?
I'll leave it up to you because there is a little bit of space here where if we go to 21, that means we are at the most extreme, like you said, Heaven's Gate. The thing about it is what Mormons are doing regarding their sex control, controlling who you should be attracted to, and the fact that they have done terrible things like shock conversion therapy and have been behind a lot of gay conversion therapy in the past, it has led to a lot of dead people. And while they're not murdering the people themselves, it doesn't seem to me to have much of a practical difference.
I'm thinking about this because you're right. They have done a lot of horrific stuff with gay conversion and you said shock therapy and things, right?
Yeah.
That's serious shit. That's as bad as cutting people's junk off in many ways, you know.
And in the past, one of the presidents actually commanded, I think it was a local authority. I don't remember who the guy was in the church, but commanded him to do surveillance in the Deseret gym to try and catch people having gay sex. I mean, they are very involved in the kinds of sex people are having, unless it is very heteronormative with a married significant other.
I'd be willing to come up to 21, I think. We can say 21 on this.
I can't say I would disagree with either one. And the emotional side of me that's mad at them for all of those dead kids kind of prefers the 21. But so I'm glad you chose it because I'm probably a little more emotionally invested on this specific point.
So the next point we have here is number 4, control types of clothing and hairstyles. And I put down 5 for this. What are your thoughts?
So again, because of the temple garments, which are also rather long, so they do control, they aren't going to control as much. This isn't true in the temple, but when you're outside of the temple in your day-to-day, they're not going to control as much what you are wearing on the outside, only that you have certain modesty levels met. So basically, if you can see the Mormon underwear, you're probably now immodest. And this is underwear that goes all the way to above the knee and the sleeves come down a ways. So there definitely is a good amount of clothing control and hairstyle, even because while there are plenty who get away with this as long as someone has confirmed their masculinity or femininity, there definitely are like red flags when a woman goes to short hair or a guy tries to grow the hair out. Specifically on the grooming standards, if you are a guy, you can't have long hair or facial hair to perform several different kinds of callings. So I would actually say a 5 is a little bit low on this one. Things could be more extreme if they put on a uniform. So I'm definitely not saying let's go all the way up to a 21, but a 5 I definitely don't think does this one justice.
On the other hand, if you think about it, they are pretty extreme about this type of thing on missions. And also they have Mormons wear the special undergarments, right?
Right.
That would count toward it. I'd be willing to come up to like an 8 is an 8 acceptable to you think?
Yeah, I think an 8's fine. If you had said 13, I would have said yeah, but 8 I'm very comfortable in.
Okay, we'll sit on an 8 then. Okay, next point we've got here is regulate diet, food, drink, hunger, and or fasting. And I put an 8 down. What are your thoughts?
So 8 is pretty good because it is more extreme than most people do with their day-to-day, and because it has a specific effect on people's social life and their behavior outside of just the eating and the drinking.
Okay,
Sure.
So the next point we've got here is number 6, under behavior control, manipulation and deprivation of sleep. I put down a 5 for this one. At the time, I felt like deprivation of sleep included all of the work they put you through, and not necessarily forcing you to stay awake for some amount of time, but overworking you is one of the tactics. What do you think?
So this is actually probably the only one where I'm going to say probably just pull it all the way down to a 1, because even on the missions, the missionaries are scheduled 8 full hours of sleep. In that same area of the Doctrine and Covenants where the dietary restrictions come in, they talk about the value of good sleep and everybody getting enough sleep. And there's sort of these like early to bed, early to rise things. So Mormonism, specifically as it relates to sleep, seem to really like sleep. It's kind of like sex. As long as you're having the kinds of sex they want, you can have lots and lots of it. They encourage you to.
Okay, number 7 was financial exploitation, manipulation, or dependence. I put 13 down for that because I know that they are really serious about tithing. How do you feel?
Yeah, 13's good because it could be more extreme because some cults do demand all of your income and then they give to you what you need. Some cults are like the most extreme form of communism. I think 13's good. Yes, Mormons do have to pay tithing. They do have to pay fast offerings, and they're often asked to give money to other things that turn out to be basically political initiatives, political movements. So I think 13 is fine.
Okay. So we got number 8 next. Restrict leisure, entertainment, or vacation time. I put 5 down for that. What are your thoughts on that one?
On the entertainment end, big time, especially growing up. And generally it is a rule throughout Mormonism that you don't ever watch R-rated movies, and like PG-13 movies you have to be very selective on. There's also lots and lots of books and things that you're meant to read about how to choose what kind of music to listen to. This is something that they actually do spend quite a bit of time. Leisure time and vacation time, that's a little different because they will encourage you, if you have the means, to go on vacation. However, you're going to feel more compelled to go to like watch pioneering plays and things of that nature at their vacation destination. So to tell you the truth, I would probably say an 8 is more appropriate, but if you feel good with 5, I won't be mad at you or anything.
You know, honestly, I'm good with coming up to 8. I could come up to 8. The reason I put a lower number is because I was trying to be overly fair with them. But this honestly is at least an 8. I'm good with that. We'll go with 8 on that one.
And if we talked about missionaries again, with missionaries, it's a full-on 21.
So number 9 is major time spent with group indoctrination and rituals and or self-indoctrination, including the internet. I put 8 down for this.
8 is pretty good because there isn't compound living, at least for most members, day to day. Obviously, there are local cities and towns that are almost entirely Mormon, but there are lots of rituals and self-indoctrination. And in fact, as a teenager going through seminary, you basically go to church all but maybe 2 days out of a month. So yeah, I think 8 is fine on this one. I kind of lean 13 sometimes, but to be safe, I think 8 is fine.
Okay, we'll be overly nice to them and say 8. I don't know why, but we will.
Yeah.
The 10th one we have here is permission required for major decisions. I put a 3 down because you don't have to do things like get permission from them to leave your house, for example.
No, you don't, but they do have their hands in a little bit of everything. And so they do ask you, for example, to go through basically Mormon temple counseling before you get married. And there's a lot of church involvement in those things. And there are lots of stories of people who have been encouraged to leave their non-believing spouses. And so I think 3 is good because it's not a 1. I might even say 5. They have their hand in enough. I would probably say jump up to 5, but no more than that.
All right, we'll come up to 5. That's fine with me. Okay, next one we have here is thoughts, feelings, and activities of self and others reported to superiors, and I put a 13 down for this one.
This one is one of the ones I'd be tempted to go all the way up to 21 because thought shaming is the name of the game with Mormonism. Mormons, kind of unlike a lot of other religions, actually think you will be held accountable for your thoughts, for that you can sin simply by thinking. And I mean that in the most shallow way, because obviously there are lots of people who believe that certain things can be a sin that come down to being thoughts, but I just mean literally you are held accountable for all of your thoughts with the exceptions of when you dream, because they believe that that's out of your control. And in addition to that, as far as the tattling goes, that's also a big thing in the church. I'm actually related to a person who's been a bishop several times and will openly brag about how when he's got a kid confessing and crying their eyes out in front of him, he will then give them the opportunity to tell on his friends because they'll take that opportunity to not have to talk about how shameful they are anymore. So this one, I don't know how it could get more extreme because, yeah, you are meant to feel ashamed of your thoughts and you are meant to then tell on people who should be more ashamed of themselves. There is a lot of like social blackmail and gossip going on in the church.
Okay, let me give you, for instance, you tell me if you're still sitting at a 21.
Yeah.
Heaven's Gate used to sit down at the table every morning, all of them together, and they would report to everybody. Each person down the line would report the sexual thoughts that they had to everybody else at the table as a method of shaming themselves into not having those thoughts anymore. I would put that at a 21.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Mormon Church is I don't know how extreme they are. You do. So right. I'm relying on you. If you think it's a 21, we'll put a 21 down for this.
So this one's hard because there is a distinct difference here. You're talking about people basically ousting themselves. And so basically, while they are technically self-shaming, anything that is sufficiently shameful that they don't want to share, if no one else knows, no one's making them share. So it's kind of the difference between what is worth a system where you feel extremely compelled to tell on yourself or a system where you feel compelled to tell on others to sort of lighten your own shame load.
All right, we can come up with a 21. That sounds good to me. All right, so number 12 is rewards and punishments used to modify behaviors, both positive and negative. I put a 2 down for this, but I honestly think that this is going to be a little bit higher, and my reason behind this is because I've done a lot more reading and research on modifying somebody's authentic personality with the cult personality. And I've seen an awful lot of that from Mormonism. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'd say most of your rewards and punishments are social rewards and punishments. Then there's also callings. And the biggest punishment that happens is withdrawing your ability to take the sacrament. And the sacrament is this thing that happens in a big public space in the chapel. Everybody sees who does and doesn't take the sacrament. And basically, while you're supposed to be able to privately repent of your sins, there is this public confession basically to everyone that you've done something. So I definitely agree that 2 is too low. There are other things they will withdraw from you, your ability to participate in certain rituals, going to the temple and things like that. I would say I'm more personally leaning toward an 8, not quite a 13 or a 21, but this one is a big part of why you behave the way you do.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. We can go with an 8 on that. I think I can agree to that. I just had not thought about it at the time as clearly as I do now. So yeah, 8 sounds good. So we got number 13 here. Discourage individualism, encourage groupthink. And I put 8 down for that. What are your thoughts on that one?
8 is probably right on par. I think with all of them, it's like, as an insider, I know that it's so much worse than he must realize. So the score has to go up. But I actually think 8 is pretty good. There is a whole lot of, if you are a woman, this is what a woman is supposed to look like. If you are a man, this is what a man is supposed to look like. So I think 8 is right around there because I can actually conceptualize it being worse, but it is still pretty bad.
Okay, we'll go with that then. All right, so next we've got number 14, impose rigid rules and regulations. I put 8 down for that. 8
is probably pretty good too because, again, the worst punishments are going to be social punishments, though there is also the case of people who are on the church's internal welfare program and how they have to be actively coming to church and things of that nature where they can take things like that, actual financial assistance away. However, again, because I can conceptualize multiple levels of how it could be worse, I think 8 is probably the most accurate score you could give there.
Next one we've got here is 15, instill dependency and obedience. And I actually rated this 21, the most extreme it can get. What are your thoughts on that one?
21 is pretty good because Mormons have that mission thing. But beyond that, Mormons are also all going around and breaking the rules, pretending they're not, shaming each other, being huge hypocrites, but still putting on this. It is a very much like a cult personality. And so because it represents in so much in your day-to-day when you interact with them, the fact that most of the time I can tell when I've met a Mormon before they've ever admitted to being a Mormon, yeah, I do think this one comes up. And then we'll talk about this more on some other points, but as far as the dependency goes, they also very much paint this portrait of if you leave the church, you will be miserable. You will only leave the church to sin. So with the dependency, though, also goes the fact that they have that internal welfare program. And sometimes that's actual financial support. Also, they have these bishop storehouses where they actually give people food. So that is for the people who are a little bit down on their financial situations and honestly, the perfect people for a cult to prey on. And then just going on a mission in general makes it a lot harder to leave. Now, what's interesting is it seems to be the biggest exodus from the church is happening from people who are somewhere between 27 and 32 years old. So those missions aren't actually working. And as I've been interviewing more and more people who went on a mission, a lot of Mormons are seeing the way the world is outside of their very controlled mission. And that is where their first doubts start to pop in. I think that's probably why the church is also starting to shift lately. And they're doing things like letting the missionaries be on social media. Now they can call home. I think it's once a week, whereas it used to be twice a year. So I would say 21 was definitely where it should be a year or two ago. It seems like they're trying to morph because when things are 21s, but not everything is a 21, people start to, from the inside, figure out that these 21s are happening to them all the time. And so I think they are trying to pull that specific number down to make everything else a little more palatable.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I imagine they're probably going to raise some other things up from, 5s or 8s at some point, too, if they're lowering some 21s. Yeah. Time will tell. But, we have one final number under behavior control, and that is number 16. Do they threaten harm to family and friends? Now, I put down a 3, and my reason for that is because I can think of some really extreme cases. Jehovah's Witnesses threatening to cut off contact between family members. Scientologists outright threatening to harm ex-members. So where do you sit with that one?
So most of what you're talking about there, I'm pretty on board with, because there is not really any physical harm offered. However, there is often threats of losing people, losing friends, losing family. I certainly have lost a number of friends and family, and then I have family members with whom I can be cordial in person, but when their kids are around, you can tell their kids have been told horror stories about me and why they need to get away from me as quick as possible. Additionally, one thing that's a little bit interesting here, and I can't say there's an official rule that I can point to, but I can tell you that there are members of my family that were extended higher positions in the church until I came out of the church and became an atheist and started talking against it. And I've noticed that there has been a decline in those kinds of opportunities. So I can't say, for example, that this person for sure is being withheld those positions because of me and my position. However, there are a lot of people that report similar things, and it does seem like that is kind of understood in the church. Like, you're not going to find a lot of higher up people who have brothers or sisters or siblings or wives, husbands, children that are out vocally criticizing the church. So there is some level of social threat to you, even if it's someone you know or really family that has left. So 3 is pretty good because it's not nothing. There are days I would definitely lean more on the 5 side, but I'm comfortable with a 3.
Okay, we can go with that. I'm happy with that. That's actually the end of the behavior control section.
So Telltale, what was the original average of just the behavior section before, and where are you falling now?
The total score for the behavior section was 121. Of course, averaging that out would mean we'd have to divide it by 16. That'd put us at about 7.5. That was their overall score. So I'd kind of round that up to an 8. They kind of averaged an 8 overall with behavior control.
And so then after going through with me, what does that score change to?
Okay, after discussing it a little bit more with you, we've got 152, and that actually averages out to 9.5. That's actually a big jump.
Yeah, and honestly, I would say that is more representative. And one last thing I want to note about my approach to this, because I've talked about other people from the inside and people from the outside trying to evaluate this. One funny thing about when I was growing up Mormon, I never, ever rejected the idea that Mormonism was a cult. We actually had a different approach, and I bet you did too as a Jehovah's Witness. So tell me if this is familiar. Well, by the definition of cults, all religions are cults. That was literally like, I accepted it. It was like, yeah, we have prophets, we have this, but you guys have the Pope or you have Jesus or whatever else, and basically would always go with just like, Every religion's a cult. I never ever defended against the church being a cult. I tried kind of like religious people do with the word faith, where they try to insist atheists have faith too. I tried to bring people down to my level as opposed to standing firmly with my beliefs.
It's actually a clever way to do it. Then Jehovah's Witnesses did do that a little bit when they got into apologetics, but generally if somebody is accusing them of something like that, then they'll just close their ears, turn around, walk the other direction. So what they taught me when I was studying to get baptized was, pulled up the definition that said, okay, to be a cult, you have to have a religious figure who you venerate, and it has to be a physical person, and they have to be alive at that moment. And they also worship objects. And of course, Jehovah's Witnesses, they'd say they don't do either of those things. But Catholics would fall into that category and all kinds of other groups. So that's how they would do it.
We will leave it there. That is the B in Byte model covered behavior control. Make sure you tune in next week when we cover the I, information control. And then at the end of it all, in part 4, we will have a short discussion on whether or not Mormonism does in fact appear to be a cult. I want to say a special thank you again to Telltale. And Telltale, would you tell the audience one more time where they can find you?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. You can find me at my channel. It's just plain Telltale. I talk about cults a lot. I talk about extremism more generally, so check me out.
You can find links to his channel as well as all the ways you can support this channel down below.
That's all I've got for you guys. Don't forget to check out Mr. Atheist's channel, which can be found in the end cards or in the description of the video. Also, keep a lookout for the next few videos. This one was the B in Byte, so we still have information control, thought control, and emotion control. Also, don't forget to check me out on Patreon. If you like what I do, you want to see me keep doing it, then you can support me there. YouTube is pretty unstable. You see lots of ups and downs with it. Patreon gives me stability. And finally, you can check me out on Teespring if you want. Links for shopping are in the description, of course. I've got a wide selection of my drawings, logos, broken hearts, all kinds of stuff. Okay, thanks for watching, guys.